Welcome everybody to the Global Observer. Today we're going to talk about the Italian referendum. In September, Italian citizens were called upon to express their opinions in a popular referendum regarding constitutional amendments. But what was this referendum about? Well, it was a confirmative referendum, that is that the population could either approve or reject a proposal made by the Five Star Movement in October 2019. More specifically, it was about the modification of the Article 56, 57 and 59 of the Italian Constitution related to the reduction of the members of the Parliament. In short, the Chamber of Deputies will be comprised of 400 members instead of 630, as well as the number of senators will be reduced from 315 to 200. At the end of the voting procedures, the majority of 66% voted in favor of the amendments, so the changes will be implemented. However, to evaluate the choice made by the Italian public, let's look at the popular arguments presented from both sides. First of all, whereas a supporter of the referendum reinforces the idea that this would reduce politics costs, actually between 57 and 100 million per year, a non-supporter counter-strikes that the parliament would be mutilated for a mere risible saving. Secondly, supporters claim that less members in a commission will unload the useless debates in commission, improving its efficiency. What is more, thanks to thinner commissions, there will be more prestige towards the figure of the member of the parliament, as well as a major accountability. In fact, each parliamentarian will have to represent a bigger number of people, and because the representation decreases, the parliamentarian's sense of duty should increase. Now let's just digress for a little moment. The current number of members of the parliament was chosen around the 60s, when the only legislative power was the parliament itself. As time passed by, both the regions of the European Union were created. For this reason, some think that nowadays the number is just excessive. However, non-supporters say that a parliament with such reduced members will take much more time to operate. They will have to deal with the same arguments, same topics, but less people, slowing down the works. Third point. Supporters believe that voting yes is going to be the only way to lead to a change within the electoral law as well, which wouldn't occur by voting no. Yet, the oppositionists do not see a direct correlation between the two.
To obtain a bigger picture and understand what students of Tor Vergata think about the referendum, we conducted a short Google survey, which also acted as an exit poll. So at the end, we received around 70 responses. 70% of the responses came from Italian students who were eligible to vote, whereas the remaining 30% came from international students. Before asking directly whether students would say yes or no to the amendments, we wanted to also assess their general knowledge about the proposed changes to the Constitution. So the majority of people who participated in this poll had extensive knowledge of the amendments. And also it is worth pointing out that the voter turnout among students was higher than the national turnout of 51%. This demonstrates greater political involvement. However, the main difference from the official results that came out after the referendum is that among the students, no was a much more common answer to the proposed amendments. More than half of the respondents said that they would say no to the reduction of the parliamentary seats, and less than 20% of the respondents said said that they would support the amendments. Among international students, the opinions split almost in half. It is safe to conclude that students of Tor Vergata, both from abroad and from Italy, demonstrated a very different outlook on the referendum. Notably, most students chose to not support the amendments, which was not the case for the national voting turnout. In order to better understand the legal procedures behind the referendum and the outcomes it might bring to the Italian public, we also consulted Professor Buratti on the matter.
I confirm my opinion. I don't think that the reduction of a number of members of parliament would imply a significant change in the basic tenets of Italian democracy or in the capability of the parliament to work in an effective way. I still consider this a good assessment. I know that many of my colleagues, on the contrary, thought that the transformation the referendum would imply were relevant, but I honestly do not share this at this point. The number of parliaments after the referendum will be a balanced one, consistent with the number of members of parliaments that you find in other assemblies in democratic countries, perfectly consistent with the possibility to organize the works of the parliament in an effective way. Yes, honestly speaking, it was highly expectable. The result is perfectly consistent with with my expectations and also the opinions of the political parties gave this outcome. It is true that in the weeks immediately before the vote, many commenters in newspapers and television said they would vote no, and maybe this gave the sensation of a more balanced outcome, but actually speaking, we were all aware that the outcome was this one, especially because of the decision to hold at the same time, at the same moment, the referendum and the regional elections, which was, in my opinion, the final fact that determined this outcome. Financial savings, in my opinion, is not the crucial issue. It's not an issue that actually pushed people to vote yes. The truth is that people voted yes for several other reasons, and we have to analyze the group of yes vote as composed by different groups and feelings. There is for sure a part coming from a populist reaction, but first of all it implies a reaction against the political class and political institutions in general. The financial element is just a minor element, but there is also another meaning of the yes, which is push for political reform, starting with the method of selection of political class, transparency in the political parties, starting with the number of members of parliament. As you see, in all of these cases, the element of financial savings is very, very limited. According to the predictions of the future composition of Parliament, and especially of the Senate, which is going to be composed by a quite low number of members of Parliament, there is the possibility of underrepresentation of some territories, and especially some regions, some let's say small-medium regions, small-medium in terms of population living there. It is true that the outcome of the referendum will reduce the representation of those regions more than the representation of other regions, but it is also true that this is an inevitable outcome when you have a regional-based representation. Every time you have a regional-based representation, you have some territories who obtain more and some territories who, on the contrary, pay something in terms of quotas of representation. And honestly speaking, the distribution is not so heterogeneous to actually threat equal representation, which is a democratic fundamental element. I think that we have more or less the same relationships which exist nowadays. We will have same differences also in the new Senate. So I'm not worried about that. Well, first of all, we have to approve a new electoral law, because for sure we have to rethink whether the current electoral system is consistent with the new composition of the parliament. Many propose an introduction of a pure proportional representation. I honestly don't know whether this is the only viable solution. First past the post, in my opinion, is not totally excluded from the scenario, but for sure we have to think about electoral legislation, and I think that political parties are doing that. And then once again, it is evident perfect bicameralism in Italy is something that we have to totally reconsider. I think that the outcome of the referendum, first of all, implies this task for Italian politics. I don't know if the parliament is truly able to match this commitment that derives from the outcome of the referendum. For sure, this is what people implied with their vote. If the parliament, if political parties want to be able to reach the goal consisting in a reform of the institutions, they will answer to the people in next elections. And this is a responsibility that they have to develop.